In this video, you're gonna watch me finish writing a chart. In just a minute, I'm gonna walk you through the conclusion of writing my swing and arrangement of The Girl from Ipanema. This is the third part in a 4-part series, so if you haven't watched the first 2 parts, why don't you pause this and go check them out now? This will make a lot more sense if you watch the other parts first. And before I continue, why don't you hit subscribe, smash that like button, and check out my Patreon. Your support really helps me make series like this and the other tutorials that I've been making in the past couple of months. I really appreciate the support. In the last video, I wrote a sax solo and a shout chorus, and all that was left, really, was to write an intro that I could use as an interlude and as the ending, which is something that I've done on a handful of charts and is honestly a pretty good thing to have in your pocket. And I needed to write the solo backgrounds. And I decided to do 1 chorus of tenor solo, but of course, in the big band setting, it's kind of expected for it to build with backgrounds from the horns. So I had to write that too. And that's really all that I had left. I left about 8 bars, but I ended up extending it a little bit, and we'll get to that. But the groove, you know, remember, is like a medium slow swing. So we have something like that. So I was thinking of what to do, and I thought maybe it would be fun to have a trombone riff, and I went bop, but I thought that was a little bit repetitive, so I actually went back and I changed it to bup, up, two, but up, up. Then I did the thing, bup, bup, up, up, and I made the harmony F9. I know we're going to end up in F major, but the 9 or the dominant 7 really gave this riff kind of a bluesier feel. And then for that little anticipated, you know, and of 3, bop, bop, I made it a C7 with some alterations, just to kind of crunch it out a little bit, for lack of a better way to put it. As this was coming together, I think I started channeling a chart that I really, really like by Patrick Williams. His arrangement from the album Sinatraland of Where or When has a very similar intro to what I ended up writing for this. So I recommend that you check that song out. I'm going to put the link in the description so that I don't get demonetized. I'll get demonetized anyway. I'm arranging a standard. Oh my goodness. So I have bup, and I wrote the trumpets in this hole going beep, up, ba-doo-da, which is honestly pretty similar to what Pat did on Where or When. But then I have the saxophones fill the next hole going ba-ba-doo-ba-dee-boo-da-da, like resolving down to the same C. Then a build-up, ba-doo-da, in the trumpets, echoed by a ba-doo-da in the saxophones. Then the whole band hits 4 and 1, bop, bop, drum fill for 2 beats, flick-it-da-ba, and they hit a chord, which of course is going to be a 5 chord leading into the song. In this case, I chose to do a 9 sus chord, a C9 sus. That leads us in to F major. So we have the C9 sus being held out for 2 bars, then I had 2 bars of drum fill, and I indicate for the drummer to fill us into those 8th note pickups for the saxophones, and that's our intro. I think it sounds really, really great. We'll see when I play it with my band. I think I might try doing kind of a shuffle groove on this just to differentiate it from the main groove, but we'll see. Maybe just switching a cymbal will be enough. But these are some things I'm mulling in my head that'll be a lot easier to decide when I've got this tune in front of a band. Then I copied this exact part at the end of the sax solo. The chart's done, here it is. Do-do-do-do-do. All right, so for the end of the sax solo form, what I ended up doing was chopping the last 2 bars of the form off, because normally it would go G minor to G flat 7 of some kind to F major for 2 bars, and then, you know, go back to another A. In this case, I was going to F7 or F9 and grooving out just like the intro. So what I did was I chopped off those last 2 bars of the form and went right into the intro, which is now an interlude. Except at the very end, we don't need to hit a 5 chord and hold it. So instead, when they hit beat 1 at the end of it, there's 3 beats of drum fill, and then we're at the sax solo. Then, coming out of the shout chorus, there's a a drum fill in the shout chorus that we wrote last time. One, biddy-doo-doo-da, biddy-biddy-doo-doo-doo, bop, then a drum fill, flick it to flip it to flip it to flip it to, you know, back into a repeat of that. Or in this case, they're gonna play that drum fill and then land at that intro, which is now the outro. And they play the exact same thing again, except in this case, this is the third time we hear it, instead of hitting that C9 sus at the end, I had to choose an ending chord. So the first thing I tried, an F major chord, which worked, but didn't really have that kind of, you know, thing that I was hearing in my head. So one thing that I'll do oftentimes is, instead of resolving to the one chord, sometimes you can take the note, like F, which is the note that we're aiming for, but instead make that a different part of the chord. In this case, what you'll often do is either resolve, instead of resolving to F, you'd resolve to like a D flat major or something, or you can make it the 7th of the chord and make it like an F sharp or a G flat major 7 something. So in this case, I chose the F sharp major 7, but I extended it as an F sharp major 13 sharp 11. And that gave me the sound that I was hearing in my head in this case. But any of those other choices would probably have worked really, really well in this situation. And the best thing to do in this case is just try them. You can either just sit at the piano and hit those chords in context if you're proficient enough at the keyboard, or like I do, because I'm not a great keyboard player, is I'll just voice them out through the horns. It doesn't take very long, and then I'll hit play on my computer and hear what it sounds like. You know, you can't trust the MIDI sounds to give you an idea of what the timbre is going to be like when the band is playing, but you can use it to kind of check and see whether the harmonies you chose represent the sound that you're trying to achieve. All right, so the last thing for me to write on this, which oftentimes is the last thing that I compose when I'm writing an arrangement for big band, and that is the solo backgrounds. And the reason for that is they kind of play a supporting role. So the solo backgrounds underneath the tenor sax solo have to serve a dual purpose. The first one is to sort of kick the soloist in the butt and make them really build their solo during the latter half of their solo. The second part is to lead in to that interlude that we had composed and we're using in multiple places in the chart. So it had to serve both of those functions in this chart. So it helps me to wait until the end to write the solo backgrounds. That's not the way I do it 100% of the time, but in this case, that's the order that I wrote the chart. All right, so the solo hits. We have an entire A section with just rhythm section and the soloist, pretty typical. The second A section, the background starts sneaking in right at the end. I started with the trombone section and had them play an 8th note figure followed by pads. I'm just kind of increasing the texture and the sound volume of the band, which forces the soloist to kind of get kicked up. Then there's a sax fill leading into this held long note. I punctuated the end of 4 on the second bar. You know, I had a unison line and then bop, which voiced out, kind of gives, you know, the impression that they were voiced out. Then we have full brass section in the middle of the bridge, and it just continues to build. Then the solo backgrounds build and build and build, and the biggest moment is actually right after the bridge at the first bar of the A section again. They hit a really high note at the end of that first bar, then it goes down to just rhythm section and soloist for like a little breath, and then trombone pads sort of lead us into that interlude. Let's take a listen to those solo backgrounds and use your imagination to hear it as if horns were playing it, and also as if there was a sax solo going on. At this point, I had done all the composition for this piece, for this arrangement. I, of course, needed to fill in the rhythm section parts, but that's a topic for other videos. And I had to do all the copying. Sibelius doesn't make a lot of good decisions when it's laying out parts automatically. But I'll eventually produce a tutorial series, probably a series, about the right way to format your parts. It's a really deep topic that a lot has been said on, and not enough. Because I see poorly written parts all the time. The next time that we continue this series, you'll be hearing a live read-through of this arrangement. I'm really excited to hear it. We're gonna play it at my upcoming rehearsal. And then you're gonna hear it right here. So don't forget to hit subscribe, hit the like button if you liked it. If you didn't, you probably stopped watching at this point anyway. Check out the Patreon, and until next time, goodbye.